So happy for you. Austin, I got Anthony. Anthony and Austin.
Hey, Tony. Hey, Tom.
How's it
How
going,
you
man?
What's
doing?
up, Anthony?
Great, great. Hey, I wanted to ask a question about Karen. I watched that again, and it's a popular topic
Fire away.
today.
Go ahead.
Um, well, kind of back to that standard deviation. I actually understand standard deviation, have an engineering background, and understand that. And I agree with all your points. Karen only started not too long ago. She hasn't seen the down market. So, what will happen when we get that 5%, that three sigma move? Will she survive? Will she adjust? It'll be interesting to see long term, because usually when you're selling naked puts and naked calls, you eventually blow up. Is what happens to
I've seen
long term.
grown men when I first started trading. The crash was in '87. That's when I turned. I was probably 30 years old, and I was only been trading for 7 years or something, 6 or 7 years, and I remember standing on the back step of the OEX pit, which had about 400 guys in. At the end of the day, there was maybe 30, 40 guys still trading in the pit, and there were grown men sitting on the floor crying, and they were selling small amounts of premium, and nobody had a position on even a tenth of the size of what Karen has on. There were a couple that had huge positions, but they had already been carried out earlier in the day.
I shared an office with one.
And I never, like, that stuck with me for my entire career. And I'm like, I am not, if they take me out of this place, I'm going out on my own terms. And it's been that way for me for trading for 30 some odd years. I'm not, I get it. Trust me, a very different view. I'll never forget that.
Now, explains your style. Explains why you're always hedging and buying an underlying put or call to confine your risk. So I understand her strategy.
Sure.
It's her style. It's
Sure.
kind of my style too. But you always have to know that an '87 crash, a 2008 crash.
Hey, it's my style too.
She
Just do
legs
it.
in, she legs out. I mean, listen, it's not just she's doing two and doing one. She's trading futures around
It's
that
my style too. I have a very similar
Yes,
position.
it
It's just smaller. That's all.
So one question. She said two standard deviation. What she didn't say was what is what's the price he uses? She said Bollinger Bands. Is it just the 20-day moving average of the SPX? That's usually the standard, but she never
I
clarified
can't tell you. I would assume it's.
Can't tell because you don't know.
Yeah, I can't tell you because I don't know. Not because I wouldn't tell you. I would tell you.
If I told you that, I'd give you away the secret sauce.
No,
and now I'm
no.
not going to tell you.
I would assume that it's not 20 days. I would assume that it's 60 days or something like that. Because,
match her back turn.
Yeah, to match her entry point.
Oh, okay. So on top of that, one of the questions that you asked, and I feel kind of dumb asking this, but you asked her about delta, 5 delta put, 10 delta put, and maybe your definition of delta is different than what I thought it was. I thought it was always between -1 and 1, but you use this term 5 delta, 10 delta. What's your definition of that? What am I missing there? When you talk about delta, selling delta, what is that? What is delta?
I just wanted to put some context around directional risk. So, she used, I'm selling options at 5% on the put side, which you could associate with a 5 delta. So that would be the equivalent of 10 total long deltas. I mean, that's all versus the 10 short deltas she has, but her net position is long delta. And the reason I was asking, I said, do you realize how long your delta is? And she's like, well, I don't even look at delta, was her response. And which would answer a lot of questions as to why she's able to do what she's able to do, because you know what? She's not focusing. She's thinking about, I'm long 10 deltas, I'm short 10 deltas, that kind of approach, not realizing that there's kind of, they're not equal weighted as far as premium goes. So she's looking at her position like, well, I'm thinking this is kind of neutral, but I'm taking in whatever it is, $13 in put premium in that example that we showed last time, and $1.50 in call premium. I'm not so sure that's equally weighted. That's all.
But I guess I still don't get, what is the definition of delta? I don't know.
Well, if you're long 100 deltas, it's it's the equivalent of being long 100 shares of stock. Does that make it easier?
If you're long 100 shares of stock, okay.
So we have to determine what your directional risk is with derivative products, with options, derivatives, everything. So what we do is we have this. We're able to use delta as a way to measure directional risk. So if I look at an underlying stock, like I've been trading Facebook, if I look at Facebook and it's trading at $69.50 right now, and I sell, let's say, March 70 call, all right, the delta on those calls is probably going to be a little over 40. Let's say it's going to be, let's just use 40
What
for
stock?
Facebook, and I sell a March 70 call. Let's say the delta on that call is, I'll make 45. If the delta on that call is 45, then what I've done is I'm long 100 deltas with the stock. I'm short 45 deltas with the option. Net, I'm long the theoretical equivalent right now of 55 shares of stock. Well, the delta in here actually is marking it at 50. March 70 calls, it has it at 50. So essentially what the marketplace is saying is, hey, if I buy stock here and I sell the March 70 calls, I'm long the equivalent of 50 shares of stock. And I think what Karen does is something very similar. Is she looks at her put delta, she looks at her call delta, and she comes up with this. It's not most people would use premium equivalence. She uses probability equivalence. It's just very different. That's all.
Okay, all right.
But delta is the directional risk that you're taking by trading a specific option.
By trading, yeah. Well, I usually equate it to how much does a stock move with $1 of movement.
Well, that's the official definition, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, sure.
You kind of flipped it around and changed it a little bit, but okay.
Well, because
right.
it doesn't make sense to most people. They don't think in terms of, most people don't think in terms of a $1 move in the underlying. You know, I mean, most people think in terms of, hey, what does this actually mean to my position? So I like to explain delta as, hey, if I buy stock and I sell a call against it, instead of that being a neutral position, it's really only, I'm really only long 50 shares of stock. And like I'll be in a room full of 500 people and I'll say something to the effect of, if I own 100 shares of stock and I sell one call, am I flat? And everybody in the room knows what delta means, but everybody in the room also thinks you're flat. And the answer is you're not. You're really long 50 shares of stock. You need to sell 2 calls against 100 shares of stock to be neutral, but everybody then thinks you're short.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you told somebody your position was long 100 shares of Facebook and short 2 March 70 calls, they would tell you, I'm giant short. When theoretically, you're
That
exactly
long, you're
neutral.
Well, one is that, yeah, and then, right. Okay.
And nobody
all right.
gets that by using the classic definition of delta. So I refuse to use it.
Yeah.
So I want to explain delta as in a way that's very applicable to the way we look at things. If the world of individual investors looked at trading as buying 100 shares of Facebook and selling 237 calls, I think people would be infinitely more successful because they would really understand the meaning of delta neutral.
Okay. All right. Well, I have to ask about Priceline. I missed it this earnings cycle, but I played it last one and did all right. I'm usually a naked strangle person, kind of like Karen, but I have been starting to sell straddles right at the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have done that yesterday.
In hindsight, you should have, but it's not that easy. It wasn't that easy to do. Trust me.
What's your opinion about naked straddles versus strangles? I thought I saw an article and it outlined, naked straddles win 80% of the time, and is it more or less risky than a strangle?
It's more risky than the strangle. I like the strangle better.
I like the strangle better.
Yeah,
okay.
just a higher chance to. Hey, we got to jump. Okay, sorry.
Okay. Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, Anthony, thank you.
Yeah.
Gonna go to